Boker Tov. Today's daf yomi is Bava Basra Lamed Gimel. We're going to start on Lamed Beis, four lines from the bottom. So Rava Bar Sharshom Nafeko Ekoa the Achil Ara. So 32b, four lines from the bottom. It's probably 32b2 would be my guess. So what? 32b2. So the 32b, four lines from the bottom. So Rava Bar Sharsham Nafako Akoa the Ka'acho Ara Diasme. We're on 32b, four lines from the bottom. So Rava Bar Sharsham had there was a rumor about him that he was eating the food that belonged to the orphans. So basically he was using orphan property. Amar Abaye, when he heard this, summoned him. It's interesting to point out from the very beginning, the orphans are not the ones who brought him to court. Abaye summoned him. It's almost as though Abaye was making the claim on behalf of the orphans, which is unusual. So Amar Abaye, Emily Ize, Gufa de Uvde Heche. He says, tell me what's going on here. Amar, so he said, Arab and Mashkunta having Nakina Meavon. He said, I had the property from their fathers. I had in my possession through something that was called a mashkanta de sura. This is something we had already several times. Mashkanta de sura is where, let's say, Reuven owes Shimon $1 million. As part of the deal, Shimon's going to give him his fields for 10 years, and each year he deducts 10% of the loan. So that's called the mashkanta de sura. So he said, listen, now I lent their father money and he gave me the property and I was deducting from it every year. Zuzi achrini gabe. And I had, in addition to that, other money that he owed me that there was no collateral on it. He also owed me another $100,000 and there was no collateral on it. So after I completed the $1 million, after he paid me back that, I knew I had to get the other $100,000 from him. So I said to myself, I'm just filling in from the Rashbam. I said to myself that I don't want to take him to court over that because then I'll have to take an oath. But I know he owes me the money, so I'll just do one more year. I'll just do one more year with this property, and everybody will be happy. I'm not stealing anything. I don't want to steal. I just want to continue with the money he owes me. But it's not collateralized. So, Amina, I said to myself, on top of 33a, I said to myself, if I'm going to return the money to the orphans, and I'll say, oh, you know what? Your father owed me another $100,000. But the rabbis have said, the rabbis say if you want to collect from heirs, I would have to take an oath. And I don't want to have to take an oath. So I didn't want to have to do it. So therefore, what did I say I'll do? I said what I'll do is I'll hide the collateral loan. I'll say there's no proof that I owe him the money, that he's paying me back the money he owes me, so I'm still able to keep using this property. There's no proof that this property is even his. And then I'll continue to use this land. Since this property is in my possession, I can always just say it's mine, and they would have no way of saying it's not mine. And so therefore, since if I would have said it was mine, I would be believed. So when I say that he owes me still more money, I should be believed also. And so therefore, that's what's going on here. Follow the case? So Abaye is not buying it. Abaye says, there's one flaw in your argument, which is you can't say that it's yours. You would never have gotten away with saying it was yours, with saying that you have purchased it. Because already the word is out that it belongs to the orphans. And the rumors are out. So therefore, Zila Hadra Nila, you'll go return it to them. V'chigali Asmi, Ishtai Dina Ba'adayu. And then when they get older, take them to court to try to collect it. But until then, you're out. And so therefore, when the orphans grow up, take them to court from the debt that you have in your hand. You have a note, and you'll show. That's Rashbam's interpretation, that he actually has a note. But Rashbam also writes that even if he didn't have a note, he would be able to make a claim. Like Rav Papa says later on, that if there were witnesses. But other commentaries say if you don't have a note, then you can't collect from the heirs. Okay. So anyway, that's the case. Next case is the following. Kriva Ravidi Bar Abin Shachav. So Ravidi Bar Abin had a relative who died. Vishachav Dikla. And he left behind a tree with some fruit on it, a palm tree or something or other. So Ravidi Bar Abin Amar Ana Karivna Tfei. So this guy had no direct heirs. He had nobody directly to inherit it. So the relatives were saying, who's a closer relative? So Ravidi Bar Abin said, I'm the closer relative. The other relative says, I'm closer. We didn't know who's closer. So therefore, Rashbam says the case is because nobody knew who was closer, the other relative grabbed it because he was stronger. So we got there first. So we adopt the principle called the Alam Gvar. Whoever is stronger gets it. So the other relative said he was closer, and he grabbed a hold of it. He said, "Ana karivna to pay." He says, and okay. So then at that point, what happened? But so if Odile the EU carved pay, in the end, the other relative admitted to after 1 or 2 years, he admitted to Ravidi Bar Abin, yeah, you're actually a closer relative. He admitted it on his own. He said, you're closer. The property is yours. So, Ukma Rav Chisda biyadei. Rav Chisda said, okay, it goes to Ravidi, it's yours. Which is also strange. What do you mean he put it in his hand? The guy gave it back to him. So what's Rav Chisda doing? But that's a question that's discussed. But Ukma Rav Chisda biyadei Amar way. So Ravidi Bar Abin is not happy with this. He says, I don't just want the land. He says, we hardly pay rate. Those 2 years, the fruits produced, like 50,000 dates. I want my dates. That's a lot of money. Give me my dates for those 2 years. Give me my money for the fruits that I lost. He says, hardly pay rate. Give me the fruits that he ate from that day until now. So when Rav Nachman, when Rav Chisda heard this, Rav Chisda said, when Rav Chisda heard this, he said, no. This is the person that they say about this Ravidi Bar Abin that he's a great man. What do you mean? What's he referring to? That this is the person they say about him that he's a great man. So there's a Gemara where Ravidi Bar Abin's mother was pregnant, and they predicted that she was going to give birth to a great man. So anyway, that's what's going on here. Well, from this Gemara, it seems Rav Chisda was the head of the Bezdin, but he didn't actually know him so well. So he says, this is the man that they predicted about him, that he's a great man. Aman kal samech mar, ahai. So, meaning to say, what are you relying upon to get your fruits? Why do you think you're entitled to the fruits? Because this man's giving it to you. Halka amar da'ana karavna tvei. So what are you relying upon to get this tree and to accept it? On that relative that admitted, and he says, I'm a closer relative. And so since this matter was a question until now, and we had said, and so therefore he was legally entitled to it. Now that he admits and says it's yours, it's like he's giving it to you as a gift. And therefore that gift only takes effect from now. I'll read you the Rashbam. Aha, you're relying upon his admission that he's admitting that now you're a closer relative. But he's the one who was saying until now that it was his. So now that he's admitting, it's like he's giving it to you as a gift. And so you're not entitled to it. Means that he's admitting to it without any evidence. That has to be what we were saying. There's no evidence. He could have got away with it, but he's admitting to it. So therefore, you're not entitled to the fruits because it's like he's giving you a gift. Yeah. This is not the same case as Migo. They're not saying Migo here, although it is very close to it. But he's saying he is just giving you a gift, right? If there would be evidence and he'd be forced to give it, then he would have been entitled to the fruits. But because there's no evidence, he's just giving it to you. Then up until now he was entitled to it, and so therefore you're not entitled to the fruits. Kivan da ode. So since, but the Rava was fearful. Rava does not agree with Rav Chisda. Rava says. Rava says, no, once he admits that it was yours, then he also has to give over the fruits. That's what Rava said. Next case. Zelmer Shalavosai, Zelmer Shalavosai. Each one says, this is a case we actually already had. So I'll go through a little quickly because we already had this case actually just 2 days ago. Each one says it's my father's. Hi, I see Saade Davasehu. Hi, I see Saade Dachal Shanei Chazaka. One brings witnesses that it's his father's, and one brings witnesses that it's his father's. Hi, I see Saade Davasehu. Hi, I see Saade Dachal Shanei Chazaka. So one brings witnesses that it's his father's, and the other one brings witnesses that he was that he had it for 3 years. So each one claims it was his father's, but one has witnesses that it was his father's, and the other one has witnesses that he had a chazaka, that he was indeed consuming the field for 3 years. So Amar Rav Chisda says the person who has the chazaka, malo l'shaker. Why would he lie? Meaning to say, when he says it's his father's, he could have claimed that he had bought it from that person. So meaning to say, the claim that it was his father's, we're just reviewing what we said 2 days ago, the claim that it's his father's is a bad claim because the other person has witnesses that it was his father's and not that man's father's. But Rav Chisda is saying, even though it's a bad claim, we're going to believe him against the witnesses because if he always wanted to, he could have just said he bought it, and then the idea that it was his other person's father's is irrelevant because he has the chazak and he's saying he bought it from him. So Rav Chisda says, Malo l'shaker. We believe him when he says it was his father's, because why would he lie? He could always have said, I bought it from you and I consumed the years of chazaka. But Abai v'Rava was fearful. What? Maybe he didn't know the law. Migo assumes that he knew the law. Yeah, that's a general question about Migo. So Abai and Rava, Rav Chisda. Abai and Rava did not agree with this claim of Rav Chisda. They basically are saying, kind of like what Bill is saying, we're not going to allow you to say Migo when there are actual witnesses that are contradicting your claim. Meaning to say, they don't allow you to do this migo when there are witnesses that would have contradicted that claim. When it contradicts witnesses, because since the witnesses are testifying to the opposite of what he's claiming, then for sure we say he's lying, and we don't believe him, even though he has a migo. And even though he has a chazaka of 3 years, this chazaka doesn't help because it's a chazaka that has no taina with it. It doesn't have a valid claim with it. And so therefore, we're not going to accept it. Okay, next case. My boss Bayara. Again, we already had this case. The person says, what are you doing in my land? He says, I bought it from you and I've had it for 3 years. So basically, he has a chazaka of 3 years, and he has a taina. So that should be enough. So he says, also I see sadi the achli tars shani. But then he couldn't bring the witnesses to support his chazaka claim. He was only able to bring the witnesses that he consumed it for 2 years, not 3 years. So he doesn't have witnesses. He only has 2 years. He doesn't have the witnesses of 3 years. It's no good. He's no good. Can't do anything. So what's the source here? By the way, I smelled its toaster oven. It's like around 5 seconds away from setting off all the fire alarms. Yeah. So what? Yeah, because if it smokes, then all the fire alarms are going to go off. I'm going to have big problems here. Maybe unplug it or something. So he says, okay, so what happened then? Amar Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says, well, you don't have a chazaka, hadra ara, return the land, hadra peri, return the fruits. You don't have a chazaka, return the land. Thank you, Levi. Was everything okay there? They were turned off? What? Okay, thank you. He says, Adar Arav Hadra Pera, return the land and return the fruits. Because you don't have a chazaka. He ate the fruits improperly, so he's got to return them. So he's out of luck. So then what happens? But now Amar Razvin says, okay, but if this guy had made a different claim, he would have been able to keep the fruits. Why? Said Razvin, Imtan, if he made a claim, if he makes the claim and says, I got this property the last 2 years, not for the land, but for the fruits, well, then Neman. Then we would trust him. If he had claimed, I got it for the fruits, now this is basically a separate case, but he's saying if a guy comes and says, you're my property, and he says, I got it for fruits, then we would believe him. Even though he doesn't have the chazak of 3 years, if he says, I had it for fruits, we will believe him, and he doesn't have to return the fruits. Avni Amar Rav Yehuda, because we have a teaching. And Rav Yehuda taught, Haiman de Nakim Maglo V'Tovila. Maglo Tovila, Rashbam says, are like farm equipment. And he says, V'amar Ezel Igdara Dikla de Palanya, the Zabani Nile. He says, I'm going to go and I'm taking my farm equipment and I'm going to go to collect the fruits from my friends, the dates that he sold to me. He's going to be believed, and we allow him to collect it. Why? Because we have a principle. Lo chatzif inish the gazir dikla the lav delay. A person is not so audacious as to cut down a palm tree and start harvesting fruits that are not his. A person's not just going to go and collect the fruits. You're just not going to just go into somebody's field with your tractor and load up all the fruits. So since that's what we typically say, therefore, if a person has these things in his possession, we're going to believe him. And so therefore, we believe him, generally speaking. If the guy pulls up his tractor. Now, the important point is that this is only about the fruits that he's already eaten. We're not going to allow him to do this for the future. But if he has like fruits and he ate them and they're like, where'd you get this? He said, well, I was sold it. We believe him. But once the person objects, then he can't eat it unless he has witnesses or a contract. Because then everybody else could just go into somebody else's field and eat their fruits and say, I took it from the fruits, and it has to be concerned. So therefore, so the Gemara says, "Hachanani lo finish the gods are dikla do avdulay." So if the person would claim, no, I had a right to eat the fruits because that's what he sold to me, we would believe him. So the Gemara says, well, why don't we say that if he says I had the land, that he bought the land, we should also believe him. That if he says I had the fruits because I bought the land, if we're going to say we believe him, if he just says I bought the fruits, then we should also believe him. He says I bought the land and that's why I ate the fruits. And he shouldn't have to, even though he has to return the land, he shouldn't have to return the fruits. So, because why else would he go down into the field unless it was to get the fruits? Unless he had permission, because the person's not arrogant. Meaning, say, if we just say a person's not so going to be so audacious as to just go in and take somebody's fruits, well, why do we say he's so audacious as to take somebody's land? So the Gemara says no. There's a distinction. With respect to, by the way, I completely don't agree with this now. Having been in a court case, I could see that the other side will just make up total lies. They'll just say the most just outlandish lies. So the idea that a person will not be so arrogant or audacious as to say something that's not his, it's not true. Except, I guess they say as a baseline, most people don't do it, like every once in a while. But anyway, the Gemara says, yeah, people aren't as pious anymore. Those are back in those days. Yeah. Okay, fine. So the Gemara said, there are different circumstances is what we're saying. Aranama, so the Gemara says, with respect to a person's right to the property, we don't believe him because we'll say, if you indeed bought this land, you have to show us the contract that you bought it with. But Yachi Perinamish, so show us the contract that you bought the fruits. Show us your receipt. People didn't used to make receipt for the fruits that they bought. It wasn't the way that they did it. You go into the farmer's market, you don't usually get a receipt. The next case. The guy says to the person, what are you doing in my property? He says to him, he says, I bought it from you, and I've been living here for 3 years. And so therefore, I'm entitled to this land. So I see shami. And indeed, he produces one witness. So in other words, he's not produced sufficient witnesses. But he only has one witness. Savara Abana Kamei Dabayu Amemar Hainu Naska de Rabbi Abba. So the rabbis thought to say that this matter was similar to the case of the Naska of Rabbi Abba. So, what's the case of the Naska de Rabbi Abba? Rashbam says that the Rashbam gives two explanations here, and he says that basically the Gemara is not trying to say. So the Gemara is not trying to say here that we'll learn this out directly from the case of Rabbi Abba, because it's obvious that anytime you don't have two witnesses, he doesn't really have it, and he has to return the land. The Gemara is saying we're just comparing them in general, but it's not a direct proof. And that's what the Rashbam says at the beginning. But the commentaries, like the Rashba, they challenge it. How can you say that the Gemara is comparing something which is not comparable? And so therefore the Gemara says, like the second explanation of Rashbam, that the Gemara's intent is to compare this to the Naska of Rabbi Abba with respect to the payment of the fruits that he consumed in the field. That means to say that he has to pay the fruits he has to return the fruits, even though the only person has only one witness, similar to the case of the Naska, as we'll get to. So Savar Rabbanan Kamei Dabayu Lamemar, that this is the Naska of Rabbi Abba. What's the Naska of Rabbi Abba? The following case. There was a man, the Chotaf Naske Mechaver. There was a person who grabbed a hold of a piece of silver from his friend. Also a Kame de Rabbi Ami. So they came to Rabbi Ami. And Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Ami Kame. So a man grabbed a hold of a piece of silver. And then the guy who he took it from came to Rabbi Ami. And Rabbi Abba was sitting there. I see Chad Sahada, the Michtaf Chad Famine. He brought a witness that he indeed had grabbed it. Amalei in. The other guy says, yeah, you have your witness. I grabbed it, but it was mine. So Amar Rabbi Ami, and we'll repeat this tomorrow. There's already tomorrow's daf. These cases are so short, but you can't stop in the middle. The whole daf is 8 lines. So what should we look at this case? Because if there would be two witnesses that testified that he took it, we would say you have to pay it back. Because that's the rule. But if there was only one witness, then and he says, I grabbed it, and it was mine that I grabbed, we would say we believe him, because if he wanted to, we could say, I never grabbed it. And if there was one witness, so basically, the first possible scenario is if there was two witnesses, we don't believe him at all. The second possible scenario is if there was one witness, we completely believe him, because he could have lied. And then there's a third possibility that even if there's one witness that he grabbed it, when there's one witness, if he was contradicting him and saying, I never grabbed it, he would swear that he never grabbed it to contradict the one witness. And so therefore, he'd have to take an oath. So what should we do in this case? Should we say, should we say that the person who grabbed it, who admits he grabbed it, should have to pay? There aren't two witnesses. Should we say you're exempt? Why would you say you're exempt? There's one witness that says that you took it. Should we make you take an oath? How can you take an oath? If you admitted that you took it. Once you admitted you took it, then he's like a thief, and therefore he can't swear. He's disqualified from taking an oath under these circumstances because he's like a thief. So what should we do? So Amru Rabbi Abba, this is the case of somebody who's obligated to take an oath, and he can't take an oath. And so anybody who can't take an oath, he has to pay. And so how is this like our case? Our case over here is like the person. And so therefore, so too with respect to the payment back of the fruits that he says, up until now, you were consuming the fruits. Meaning to say, if there be two witnesses to that you ate the land, he would get to keep it. But if there were no witnesses at all, he would have to return the land. But now that he has one witness that he ate the fruits, but it was only one witness, he needs to swear to contradict it. But since he can't swear because he's admitting that he ate the fruits, but he's saying that it was mine, then he now has to take an oath that he can't take an oath, and he has to pay. So that's what the Gemara wants to say it. And we'll review this case again tomorrow. So Amar Abaye midami. No, the two cases are not the same. In the case of the piece of silver of Rabbi Abba, there they come to say that you stole it and you have to pay. If there would be another witness who says that he took it, of course we would take it away. In this case, there's one witness that he has the property. If another witness would come, he would completely get it. It's totally not the same case. It's in fact similar. If you want to say that the case of Rabbi Abba is similar to something, it's similar to a case that where one witness says that he ate the fruits for 2 years, but he doesn't have anybody testifying that he doesn't have anybody testifying about the property, and so therefore he's going to be believed that he could have claimed that he didn't eat anything, and so that's the case. And it's similar to it. We'll go over that tomorrow, but we'll stop here for today's daf. A big shkoyach to everyone.
Thank you.